Alright, so this is, I guess, gonna be an impromptu response video. Um, John McLane, sorry. I do apologize for not getting back to your comment. I apologize for getting back to your comment like almost 2 years later. You were asking for a specific list of makes and models of vehicles that are quote unquote EMP proof, vehicles that could survive, an EMP strike. Unfortunately, I do not have such list. I do have these basic rules and generalities, though, from my years of researching the topic. Okay? And gotta keep in mind these few things before I go off with this list. If you do, alright, if the United States does experience what is called an EMP attack, there's many debates to whether or not, the survivability of certain vehicles, whether or not they'll be able to run. Different EMP commissions and different studies have stated, basically mixed answers, mixed results to whether or not even modern vehicles would be able to survive an EMP attack. So, this being said, I always lean towards more of the cautious side. But worst case scenario, we're going to assume that everything is right. You got anything that's got any amount of electronics in it, that it's going to be fried no matter what, and you're going to need to have doubles of. Let's say you happen to get your vehicle running again, or your vehicle was never affected, and everybody else's vehicles just stop. That's going to paint a really big target on your back. Just so you're aware, okay? If you've got a running vehicle and everybody else doesn't, everybody else is stuck on the side of the road, and you're still chugging along, you have pretty much painted a target on your back. Kind of one of those unintended consequences. But anyhow, get back on topic here. So, general rule of thumb, if you have a vehicle that is older than 1974, so pre-1974, so that means 1973 and older, okay? Pre-1974 and older, general rule of thumb, your vehicle, assuming that nobody has monkeyed around with it, assuming that you weren't being, some tuner in a garage trying to maximize the performance of your vehicle, okay? If it is bone stock, replaced with OEM parts, okay? Bone stock, all original, 1973 and older. If your vehicle is running off of a mechanical fuel pump, points and coils, and a generator, not an alternator, a generator, then your vehicle is already EMP proof. On the other hand, if I had one of them vehicles, I would I would actually recommend storing a spare battery in a Faraday cage. Highly recommend it. There's a lot of experts saying that it won't couple with the battery, and then there's other experts saying that it will couple with the battery, or it can very least drain the battery. I would have a spare battery just in case it completely drains the battery and drains it to a point where the battery is completely dead, like flatline dead, and there's no jump start it. Because if there's no other vehicle around that's running to jump start your vehicle, you're kind of SOL. So another reason, make sure you got a spare battery tucked away in a Faraday cage. All right, so vehicles that were manufactured 1986 on after, that's when they start putting computers and sensors inside of them. Rest assured, if you've got a vehicle that was manufactured after 1985, more than likely it ain't going to be running after an EMP strike, because that's when they started introducing electronic management systems, or body control, body control management systems. Basically, all it is a computer that runs diagnostics on all these different sensors. These sensors are constantly giving feedback to the computer, and the computer is controlling everything from the timing of how each piston fires in what order and everything. Okay, there are very few vehicles at this time that can either be retrofitted to run off of old school carburetor, old school point system and magneto, and old school mechanical fuel pumps. Okay, if you have a vehicle that, and still, all right, for these hot rodders out there, okay, that happen to have like a classic muscle car or a truck that they turned into a muscle truck. Like, if you ever watch a show on Discovery Channel called Street Outlaws, you see these guys got a lot of older vehicles, vehicles that you would think that, in theory they would be EMP proof, but after you see all the work that they do tuning these things up, tuning them up, trying to maximize the performance out of them, they install computers, they install sensors, they install electronically controlled fuel injection systems, electronically controlled fuel pumps, manifold actual, what the heck do they call it? Manifold actual pressure sensors, throttle positioning sensors, crank positioning sensors, oxygen sensors. That those vehicles are now prone to, the effects of an EMP now, because they installed all those electronics on. So, safe to say, those vehicles won't work. Like I said, 80s gets to be kind of a hairy time in the terms of vehicles. Another thing I must bring up, and this is something that Walter Davis brought up, okay? There is a chance, I want to say probably about a 50-50 chance, if your vehicle has any of those electronics listed on, even if you had bought doubles of it, okay? Like I did for my pickup truck. I bought doubles of everything I could possibly think of. There's a 50-50 chance after the initial EMP strike that even after you've got all those doubles of parts and you're sitting there trying to do a plug and play and replacing all these parts, that the wiring harnesses, the very wiring harnesses that you were using to reattach all these parts, could possibly be fried. I hope that's not the case, because as far as I know, at least with CMEs, EMPs, like I said, a lot of it has to do with the distance of something metallic. Has to span over. It has to either meet or exceed roughly, I think it's like 300 feet in overall length, in order for the electric waves to be able to couple with the metallic items. Metallic items in question being all those fine wires and wiring harnesses. Okay. Let's see. If you got vehicles from the 80s, okay, like 1985 or older, and you're trying to see if you can either EMP proof them, or at the very least get some doubles of key parts and components that you put, tuck away in a Faraday cage to protect for later. Stay away from the imports especially like Japanese cars and some of the European cars. I'm not saying because they're crap. I mean, relatively speaking, compared to their American counterparts, they are. But the reason why I'm saying that is because during that time, that's when those countries were getting kind of really experimental and putting electronics into their cars, putting computers, electronic control management systems in their cars. And like I said, some of those vehicles won't, like I said, they won't meet the standard of 1986 and older. So yeah, stay away from imports. Stick with the domestics. A lot of the American pickup trucks, a lot of them were, like I said, they had minimal electronics. Cars, on the other hand, the one thing I've noticed with auto manufacturers, they like to kind of dick around with cars. They like to include, new special features and new improvements. They'll include, like I said, they'll put that stuff on the car, like airbags and all that crap. They'll put all that on the cars before they start putting that on the trucks. So trucks are generally, I want to say, probably about 4 or 5 years behind the curve of cars when it comes to introducing, electronics, new features, safety features, and stuff like that. So yeah, trucks of that era, you just got to know what you're looking for. A lot of the GMC and Chevy trucks from the 80s, they still had electronics in them, but their electronics were minimal. It wouldn't be until about 1988 where you actually had to start worrying about electronics. Okay, so if you got an old square body Chevy, like a C10 or C20 or K series, okay, really at that point in time, the only things that you should have to worry about, making sure you got a double of an alternator, a double of a starter, a double of electronic control module, because those trucks in the 80s did not have points and coils. They did not run on magnetos or generators. They had alternators, they had starters, and those had diodes in them. Okay, those diodes are like rectifiers. Okay, those are the weak links on the ignition system. Like I said, that and the ignition control module. Those are the weak links on those trucks in the event of an EMP. That, and you also have to make, like I said, you also got to keep an eye out, because some people like to monkey around. They like to install aftermarket fuel pumps, aftermarket electronically controlled fuel injection system. Notice I'm saying electronically controlled, not electric. Electronically controlled. That means it's got little printed microchips and circuitry boards that are controlling, that are giving feedback from a sensor, input from a sensor, and it's feeding it to basically a centralized computer. If you can avoid all that crap, like I said, keep with mechanical, you should be okay. Okay? Make sure you keep a spare battery. I cannot emphasize this. Keep a spare battery. I know there's some people that debate, batteries won't be affected. I beg to differ. I would like to assume, like I said, worst case scenario, that if the EMP does not very least couple with the battery, it will drain it. It will drain it to a degree to where your vehicle will not turn over. Okay? It's probably better to, in this case too, it's also probably better to have a vehicle with a standard transmission, standard stick shift transmission, because at the very least, you can put it in, I think it was, put it in second, pop the, roll it downhill, pop the clutch, and be able to roll start it. Okay? Now, as for, like I said, as for cars, couldn't tell you. As far as specific makes and models of cars or trucks, couldn't tell you. Diesel trucks, oh, that's another topic, forgot. Diesel trucks. If you got anything running off diesel truck, heavier equipment, you're not going to really have to worry about electronics. You're not going to have to worry about those not starting up, because for the most part, a lot of that equipment, it's either has minimal or has absolutely no electronics whatsoever. Diesel trucks, as long as the diesel engine in question is not anything newer than I think 1992, so basically pre-1993, okay, on back, okay, those will also be EMP proof. The only thing you have to worry about in that case is make sure that, if your diesel engine's got an alternator and an electronic ignition, that you've got doubles of parts and pieces. Last thing to keep in mind, if there is some sort of tactical EMP weapon used against us, EMP strike, don't think for 1 minute that, once the initial EMP strike has happened, it's done, it's over with, and there ain't going to be another one. Guarantee whatever country launches an EMP against us, they're more likely going to launch a second and quite possibly a third follow-up EMP strike. Now, whether or not they're going to launch it, 1 day after, or 2 days after, or 2 weeks after the initial, or even 2 months after the initial EMP strike, that's yet to be known. Like I said, a lot of the quote-unquote effects of an EMP are still unknown, because there has not been any relevant or official testing of EMP strikes or the effects of an EMP strike since Starfish Prime in 1962, when a nuclear weapon was detonated in high altitude on purpose just to see the effects of an EMP on the electrical grid. Now, like I said, there are other experts out there that kind of lean on the, you're going to be okay. Your vehicle, being made out of mostly metal, acts like a Faraday cage. Which, you know what? To be fair, they are correct. Your vehicle will act as a natural Faraday cage. Thus, it will provide some natural resistant properties against the effect of an EMP. Now, there's some that are pretty optimistic. They're going to say, well, maybe 9 in 10 vehicles will be able to start back up after the EMP, or it's like, yeah, and only 2 out of 10 vehicles will be affected, and like I said, it'll cause the EMP will cause the vehicle to stall, but be able to start. And then like 1 in 10 of the, like I said, I should say, out of the 2 in 10, 1 in 10 of those vehicles will be permanently fried and not be able to start. I have a feeling that for those that are kind of optimistic, they're probably lumping in like the electric hybrids, like the Toyota Priuses, and probably like the fully electric cars like the Teslas and the Chevy Volts. So, but I'm, like I said, I'm going to lean more on the cautionary side. I'm just going to assume worst case scenario that that's probably not going to be the case. But even so, even if it was 1 in 10 vehicles that never started back up again, that were permanently fried, just imagine the traffic jam, the traffic problems it's going to cause in the interstates and freeways and local roads. All these vehicles, A lot of them got electric brakes. They got electrically controlled brakes, like electro-hydraulically controlled brakes. You know, like basically uses electronics to override the hydraulics, so you won't even be able to, like, that parking brake will just set itself and it'll stay on, and you're not going to be able to move that vehicle one way or another. So I don't know. That's going to be interesting. But you know, that by itself is going to cause so many accidents. It's going to be causing so many traffic jams and pileups. So yeah, just things to consider. Can't think of anything else. Oh, I'm certain I'm going to think of something else before I go ahead and end this. But yeah, I think that's all I've got. I'm Diorce, and I'm out. You guys have yourselves a good one. Bye-bye.